Hey, good evening, folks. We are broadcasting live here in Atlanta. Welcome to Think Tactical, and my co-hosts are with me tonight. We have Coach Myron Petro here and Stingray Bob Coleman, and I am Black Dragon. And welcome to our show. Hey, what's going on, guys?
How are you doing today, John?
Doing great, man. How are you, Myron?
I'm doing fantastic.
Bob, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. John, how are you, bud?
I am doing excellent. So, what we have going on here, folks, as you know, this is Think Tactical. This is our second podcast, and if you listen to the first one, we were just talking about things that we would be talking about, and so this is our first time getting into it. And as you guys know, for me, Think Tactical was put together after reading a horrible story about a young girl that was attacked and her parents were stalked, and her parents were killed. She was kidnapped, and for me, it was a terrible thing. And I wanted to talk about some things. And my other channel, Black Dragon Biker TV, wasn't the place to do it. So I came together with a couple of my colleagues, some guys I've worked with for many, many years in the corporate sector, and we decided to do Think Tactical. And I've got a couple of really great guys here, Bob Coleman, and we call him Stingray, and we've got Myron Petro, we call him Coach. Myron used to be a wrestling coach and all kinds of things like that, and these guys have an incredible background and all the great things that this channel is going to be about. And so tonight, and this actually came as a request from a couple of the guys from my other channel, Bob and Myron. And so a couple of guys asked me to talk about the color codes, asked us to talk about the color codes. And I think what's going to be really cool about that is we want to talk about defending our families and protecting our families, and theoretically we get our mind set into a theoretical movement and protection and action. But theory to practice is something we used to do in the Navy, where we would take something that we theorize, like maybe going against a battle group or something, and then we go practice it, take theory to practice. And this whole idea about color codes is an interesting thing that we can use to protect our families. So, where does this color code stuff come from, and what's it about, and what does it mean? So any one of you guys, just go ahead and start downloading to us.
The original color code came up from Colonel Jeff Cooper, who was he was quite a tactician and a military man, and he also started a center for self-defense to teach people how to use firearms. And the whole idea behind the color code, this color code is used by law enforcement everywhere. This is taught to the rookie cops, and it's been honed over the years by veterans, and it's just to get them into the mental preparedness, which is what we want to do with our audience, to get them in the mental preparedness to be able to take care of themselves in situations.
So Colonel Jeff Cooper comes up with this color code, which has been embraced and taught by defense instructors and law enforcement for many years. And it's a mental process, not a physical process. It's a mental process to get your mind ready from moving from theory to practice, from the theoretical use of your weapon to the actual use of your weapon, from the theoretical use of the theoretical thought of defending yourself to the actual thought, the actual process of defending yourself. So as you're saying, Myron, this is a thought process, and what it is Colonel Cooper essentially broke down alertness levels into four colors. Four colors.
Yeah, his idea was to keep it simple, not get anything complex. Just keep it simple.
So these colors institute in us a mental process that does what for us?
It allows us to be ready to identify, do we need to be ready to identify any potential threats? Like I said, I've always said it's not just potential threats of somebody attacking you, but it could be on the highway. You're traveling down the interstate at 70 miles an hour, and the car in front of you starts weaving back and forth like he's drunk, or maybe he's having a heart attack. But that's a potential threat for you. You just can't pull off the side of the road on most interstates. It's not that simple. So now you've got to figure out what he's going to do and be ready, prepared to react to it.
It's interesting that that this system exists. I'm recently learning about it, and Bob as well. But Bob, you said you've always kind of moved in a system like this.
Well, it's it's situational. It's a color code application to situational awareness. That's what it amounts to. And yeah, I've always thought in these terms, in terms of being in a relaxed state. Jeff Cooper said you should never be in white unless you're asleep. But the natural tendency for most folks, when you're in your home, you're feeling safe, you tend to be in a condition white. All three of us are dog owners, so we have we have other members of our family that can remain in condition yellow, even though we go condition white. So they can get us from white to yellow in a hurry. But the idea behind the color codes is a mental escalation in a situational awareness scenario. It's also an effective communication method if you train your family and other friends and members of your family to understand what the different levels mean. All you have to do is utter the word and give some indication of direction, and everybody in the group will understand what's going on. If you are walking through a parking lot at night and you go from your natural condition of yellow at that point, and you declare orange, give a hand signal in a certain direction, everybody's focus should shift that way because you've identified a potential threat in the parking lot.
I think it's going to be important at this point to talk about what the colors are and what they mean. So you've mentioned three of the colors already, Bob. So why don't you just tell us what the colors are and what they mean, and kind of we'll talk about how we employ them. So what are the colors and how many are there?
Well, there are four colors in Colonel Jeff Cooper's original color code. It's white, yellow, orange, and red. And white, as I stated earlier, is a switched off state. You're relaxed. You feel safe. You're not aware of your surroundings necessarily, who or what's going on. You're feeling very comfortable. Yellow is not paranoid. It's just a more switched on state. You're aware of what's going on around you, but you're not focused on any particular potential threat or even direction. Orange, you're starting to focus on a potential threat, but not to the exclusion of all others. It's a heightened level of awareness. You sense something's not right. Maybe somebody's coming across the parking lot. They got their hands in their pockets. They're shifting their vision back and forth, and they may be just looking for the car, but it's still, you identified a potential threat. And so if you're with a group, especially your family, you may want to draw their attention to that. So you can actually use the color code word, orange, and indicate a direction where that threat's coming from. Red is more of an escalation. You've identified a specific threat. Your focus is on that specific threat. You are preparing for a possible unpleasant encounter, up to including deadly force, or you may just be employing whatever force you have available, pepper spray, baton, fisticuffs, whatever you happen to have with you at the moment. If you identify an orange, you maybe want to look for alternative routes to your destination in that parking lot, or may even want to think about retreating back to the safety of whatever building you just exited from. And that's something you can communicate to your family members pretty easily once you declare the orange state of awareness. You can just use hand signals that say, okay, we're heading back to the store, kind of thing. If you want to determine if the threat's real, you can change your direction and see how the threat responds. Are they still on an intercept with you? Have they changed their course to alter back to an intercept? Or did they continue on in their direction that they were originally heading? You may not want to turn loose of that orange state, but you may relax a little bit and not think it's going straight to red.
Bob, you bring up an important point that I'd like to expand on. Confrontation with the threat is not your only option. Escape and evade is also a valid option. Retreating back to where you came in from. Confrontation should be a last resort because it can always end bad for you. And that's why one of the things about condition yellow and then to condition orange is that you figure out different routes. What are my other options? Can I go back to the building I was just in? Can I go back to my car? If you're in your car, can I take a side road? Like say, if you're in a parking lot, would it be better if I move around and put distance between me and the potential threat? Or put a line of cars? Like you said, you made a point about changing your route to see if the threat follows you, and that's a good point. Putting things between you and them is actually to your advantage.
Well,
distance is your friend.
That's pretty cool. So we think about these states as mental states by which you escalate your mindset to prepare yourself to engage or flee or move away from what could potentially be a threat. It's like DEFCON levels. It's like a DEFCON level for the country. It's a DEFCON level for your mind. So white is the lowest level, and that's the level that none of us should ever be at unless we're at home asleep. And that's where you're switched completely off and unaware of what's going on around you, and you're really not ready for anything affecting you. And this condition is when you're either fatigued or stressed or not paying attention, or you're impaired due to alcohol or drugs or depression or loss of a family member. You can be in the white color based on anything that could happen with you that might not be good for your life, or you might be tired, you might be sleepy, anything. And the only time you really should be in a white maybe is if you're at home, like Bob says, with the dogs that are in the yellow. The yellow state of alert is probably where we should all be at all times in our lives, but we're probably not. And the yellow state of alert is when you're aware, it's a relaxed calm. You're aware, you're relaxed, but you're aware of your surroundings. You're keeping your eyes open. You know what's going on around you. You know who's around you. You know what's around you. You know what's going on. You're not this tourist staring up at the bright lights, staring up at the top of the skyscrapers. You're actually alert, and you're not looking like a sheep, and you might not be, and you're not acting like a sheep. Orange is when you recognize that there could be a threat, a heightened level of awareness. You sense that something is not right. You get a strange feeling. Like Bob said, someone might not be moving right. Someone might not be acting right. Someone you might think is following you. And you can do a few things to see if that's a real threat, like if you're driving down the road and you feel like you're being followed, and all of a sudden you're orange and you're starting to focus in on, oh my goodness, am I being followed? Well, maybe one quick way to find out if you're being followed in a car is 4 right turns. 4 right turns is essentially a circle. So you go down the street, you make a right turn, you go down a few more blocks, a few more red lights, you make a right turn, you go down a mile, you make a right turn, then you go down half a block, you make a right turn. You've made a circle. No one should be, that you're absolutely being followed at that point. Maybe you want to drive to the police station. That's one way to maybe alleviate a threat or determine if a threat is real. But the one thing you do want to remember is when you're in orange, that doesn't mean you're out of yellow, because orange allows you to kind of focus in on that threat, but you still have to keep in mind that there are other threats around you. And one of the biggest things about a threat is sometimes one guy will distract you while another guy comes at you. So you don't give up one when you move into another. You still have to be situationally aware of everything that's around you. And then red is when you have determined that you have a definite problem, someone you may have to take out, someone you may have to flee from, someone you may have to engage. And I remember looking at Colonel Cooper's video, Jeff Cooper's video, where he said the most important part about red is that you set a mental trigger. And when that mental trigger is breached, then you know you will engage that target. And the example he gave was you see a man with a gun, like maybe you're coming around a corner or something, and you see a man that's on your property or whatever, something like that, with a gun, and you say to yourself, okay, I've got my gun on him, I'm going to tell him to freeze, and if he turns his gun towards me, my mental trigger is that gun turns towards me, I'm going to engage and take him out. If that gun never turns towards me, then he has the opportunity to drop it and do all of the things that I demand that he do or command that he do. So you've set a mental trigger. Red doesn't mean that you're gonna engage, but red means that there is a mental trigger that's set to a real possibility that you may have to engage, and that mental trigger, once it has been depressed, you engage. Now I want to ask you two gentlemen, how do you turn these color codes of situational awareness for you into color codes the family understands, and in what kind of situations could you use that color coding to bring the family online and to be able to help the family?
Well, it's the color codes are almost self-explanatory. Say almost. There is some explanation to them. But it's very easy for you when you're walking, like I said, you're in yellow. Make sure your wife is in yellow. Make sure your family's in yellow. In other words, don't let them walk through a parking lot with their face in their smartphone. That's a condition white. And that's something you should have. So you remind me of that. But if you see something that's a potential threat, all you have to do is raise up and say orange, left. Orange, 1 o'clock. And if you've communicated to your family and friends what that means, which, one of the things we're doing now is we're communicating that out, and they understand that, then their attention should go to that and should follow your attentions.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yes, orange, 1 o'clock. The whole family knows.
Yeah. And you just said 2 words.
So, and I guess I like that example. I think, Bob, you say you taught your girls, your kids this. The cell phone while walking down the street is an absolute no-no.
Oh yeah, my daughter. Everybody laughs. They call her the mother hen because when they're doing stupid things like that, walking out of stores, walking across parking lots with her face in her cell phone, she's just shaking her head and she's got her head on a swivel. And I haven't made her paranoid. It's just she's aware that, and she doesn't have her face in her phone. She gets in her car, locks the doors, then she can put her face back in her phone. When she got the keys and ignition, can actually do something. And she carries pepper spray around with her everywhere she can legally take it. She has it, and she's turned 21, and soon I imagine I will be setting her up with some sort of a firearm, as I did my son when he got to that age. So,
Well, Bob, it also makes common sense. It's not just from a criminal threat, because you might not feel a criminal threat if you're in a crowded parking lot with a lot of other people and police around, but also just the threat of being hit by a car. People in parking lots, they're driving around, they're not paying attention what's in front of them. They're looking for a parking spot. If you're not paying attention to where you're walking, it's very easy for you to walk in front of a car and get hit. These people that walk around with their face in their smartphones just really aggravates me, because they're the ones they get hurt, and then they're ready to sue you for their negligence.
So the threat level is not necessarily, it doesn't always have to be people or criminals. It can be someone in a car not paying attention, driving down the road with their face driving through a parking lot with their face in their phone or tablet or computer while driving, and your face in your phone. You weren't able to be at yellow to go to orange, to go to red, to get away from that threat, and you get run over just because you're looking at the darn phone. Kind of crazy, huh?
Right. That is, and that's what it is. That's why I always talk about think tackle. It's a mental thing all the time. It's not just a criminal thing. You worry about being attacked or a criminal thing. You've got to pay attention to what you're doing.
So, as you guys are saying, we can get our families prepared to be tactical, because this could even work in the house. Like, if you have a situation where you've talked to the kids about white, about yellow, about orange, about red. And all you would need to do if your house was being home invaded would be something like scream red 1. And the kids know to head to the safe room. The wife knows to head to the safe room. There's a certain practice in place where the wife is getting the weapon to protect the home, while the kids are calling on the cell phone, or whatever the case, whatever your scenario is set to be. Because I have one friend that says they actually have a safe room and a place to run to and things like that. But that, whatever it is, it needs to be set up, communicated, and trained upon. And do either one of you guys do that? Do you train your family, or have you had these discussions?
Well, we've had the discussions in my family, and we've even, when the kids were younger, mine are grown up and out of the house. I have these discussions with my wife on occasion when she's paying attention. But when they were younger, we did fire drills. I would set off the smoke alarm, and they would know what to do to meet outside, get their act together, get down the steps, go out this one door, meet outside. Sometimes I would block that door, and they would have to go out another door. And I did it when they weren't in panic, so that it wasn't a surprise thing in the middle of the night. I did, but not on purpose, at least. But they knew then after when the fire drills, just like they do fire drills at school. Here's what we do. And it's the same type of thing. When they get older, you do scenario. If I yell red front door, that means you guys go to the back door or to whatever room we've designated, and you hunker down there, and you wait for further instructions. And the instruction that's when they're real young. When they're a little bit older, then you can have an ally that will also pick up a gun and help you, or know which one has one person designated to call 911.
Right.
Don't say somebody do it. Have one person designated that they will grab their cell phone and they will dial 911. That is their only job. Everybody else has other things to do.
So what about you, Bob? Have you worked this out with your family? You still got kids at home, don't you?
Yeah, like I said before, I didn't really know that much about the color code, kind of like you, John. But yes, we did the fire drills, kind of like Myron. My particular home is a raised ranch, which means the poor kid in the back bedroom got stuck occasionally with the drill, because I would put a traffic cone in the hallway, which means if they open the door, that means fire was present there. That pass cut off. They got to pull out the rescue ladder from underneath the bed and prepare to deploy that out the back window. So anybody in the front of the house had windows that they could drop out of safely, but the back is like a 2-story. So they had to have and we did. I have a rescue ladder, one of those fire rescue ladders that will hang over the windowsill and furl out, and then they can climb out the window and go down the ladder safely. Now, we didn't practice them actually going down the ladder safely, but we did actually practice them pulling it out and deploying it out the window. Now, as far as the home defense, that's a subject for a whole other podcast. But yes, given that, as I explained earlier, my son is still in the home and he is armed. So yes, we have had drills so I don't get shot myself by my 27-year-old son in case something untoward does enter our house. We don't want to be having the what do they call it, the circular firing squad.
Right. So I think we've hit upon some great things for this show. We want to get our families aware, folks. We want to get our families aware of the dangers that could be out there and how we're going to survive that danger. We want to move from theory to practice. We want to actually teach our kids and our families and our loved ones and our extended families and the people that we're staying with kind of situational awareness. And one of the great ways to do it that's been practiced for many, many, many years is the situational awareness, the mental acuity of the color code. The color code invented by Col Jeff Cooper. White, in condition white, you are relaxed and unaware of what is going on around you. Ideally, you will only be in condition white when asleep, but realistically, we often drop our guard, and when we are at home or in some other environment, we assume to be safe, and we shouldn't do that. We should never be in white, if at all possible. Yellow, in condition yellow, you remain relaxed but are aware of who and what is around you. This merely means that you are paying attention to the sights and sounds that surround you, whether you are at home or moving in society. In comparison to condition white, you simply have moved your alertness to the level of attention that will prevent you from being totally surprised by the action of another person. You are not anticipating a threat, but rather keeping your awareness on your surroundings and the other people that are around you. You're not necessarily paranoid. You're just conditionally and situationally aware. In condition orange, you have identified something of interest, something that may or may not prove to be a threat. Until you are satisfied that no threat exists, your radar will stay focused on that possible threat, but not to the point where you are oblivious to other possible threats. If you are well trained, your subconscious mind will be visualizing a what-if scenario, like a motorcyclist riding a motorcycle, always 2 or 3 steps ahead of the cars that are on the road. Your what-if situations as possible solutions should an attack take place. Your what-if situations as if you're in a motorcycle, what would you do if a car did this, that, or the other? Where would you go? You always keep in mind what if. And if you're keeping in mind what if, your mind is preparing a place for you to go, a thing for you to do. Simple Boolean algebra. What if, then, what if, then. And then red. If the focus of your attention in condition orange does something you find threatening, you will shift to condition red. Notice that condition red is not the firing stroke. Instead, condition red simply changes the focus of your attention from a potential threat to a potential target. You will draw your weapon or move still further to site acquisition only if the potential target's actions dictate such a response. If you are attacked in red, you should be fully prepared to defend yourself. Whether or not you have a gun in your hand or on target will depend on the circumstances, but mentally, you are already ahead of the game. Colonel Cooper's awareness color code system, has lasted so long because of its simplicity. 4 colors allows just enough variety for all problems without being too complicated. Well-adjusted individuals can run through the color code dozens of times every day and be no worse for it. Actually, most police officers and security professionals who learn the color code realize they have been taking these steps on their own all along. In closing, we must be ready for whatever comes our way, be it an armed attacker, an intruder in your home, or simply refusing to be a victim. The central theme to this is preparing your skills physically, but most importantly, mentally. We want to stay alert. We want to stay aware. We thank you for tuning in, and always remember, think tactical.